And so Daniel Snyder's really not going to, I don't think he's going to have much of a choice. And I don't think the climate is any better than it's ever been for him to make that change. Skip, forget the climate. It's the right thing to do. Whatever happened to doing the right thing?
Okay.
Hey, thanks for watching Numbskull News, and today we're talking about the Washington Redskins. And if you're offended by that name, I'm sorry. They haven't changed the name yet, so that's what we're going to use. The media, of course, being the bastion of misinformation, they've got a million reasons why they're telling you the Redskins is just a horrible, racist name. And I'm going to use a segment from Undisputed, because it's kind of a microcosm of all the media bullshit that's been going on. How these people distort history or completely lie about it. And sometimes they don't even know they're lying about it, all right? They're getting a little clip from Facebook or some other social media with some bullshit facts that aren't even, or maybe half-truths or, like I said, straight-up lies. So we're going to go through that segment from First Take and just take out some of the most amazing groups of bullshit and break that down for you. So let's get started.
Now they're starting to hit Daniel Snyder where it would potentially hurt, and that's in his back pocket. Now he can be stubborn and bullheaded and try to and dismiss. Who needs an extra $150 million in advertising? But Skip, that's nothing to sneeze at. That gets people's undivided attention.
Well, let's start with the reasons they're changing the name, and Shannon has it right. They have it right. He has it right. All right, it's about the money. Because when you got FedEx, when you got Nike, and all these big corporations saying, you know what, the heat's getting a little strong, we don't want to be associated with it, so we're going to pull back our money. And when you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, of course you're going to listen. And by the way, Dan Snyder has already copyrighted a ton of names, so he's got a ton of stuff he can choose from, because he pretty much knew the writing was on the wall years ago. And I'm not saying that Dan Snyder's a good owner. I'm not saying he's a good person. I don't know him. Maybe he's racist. Maybe he's not. I have no idea. And by the way, I don't care if they change their name. I'm a Cowboys fan. Screw Washington. But I just wanted to start off with saying that, you know what? They're not full of crap on everything. There's some truth into what Shannon's saying. The reason they're changing the name, of course, money.
He went on a campaign to convince people that there was nothing wrong with that nickname. And he did so by basically doing a national tour of different reservations, visiting with different tribal chiefs. He also gave $4 million to Native American causes.
Right.
And of course, he's talking about Dan Snyder in 2014 when all this crap first started erupting. And he was right. Dan Snyder went to all these tribes and met with people, and they did polls. The Redskins did a poll. The NFL did a poll. I think the Washington Post did a poll. And what they all found was no one really gave a shit. And the reason why Dan Snyder never lost the copyright, which that was the big thing, right? Oh, we're going to pull, that was politicians, right? Saying they were going to pull the copyright of the Redskins. And anyone can use the Redskins and not have to pay Dan Snyder anything. Well, they stopped that because of those polls. Hey, they don't have a problem with it. And thus, it went away. And of course, later on, Skip saying, I don't know what he did. What he did was prove that the name wasn't problematic for most Native American people.
Most, like a vast majority of Native Americans, were not offended by that nickname. And there was the most talked about poll of all came out in 2016 via the Washington Post, a highly credible at that point website and newspaper.
Right.
9 out of 10 said we are not offended by the nickname.
Like I said, and I don't know what he means by used to be, or at that time the Washington Post was, they're still felt as credible, at least by liberals they are.
I don't care I don't care about 90. I don't care if it's 95% says it's okay. That 5% says no, leave it alone.
Okay, well, that's not how our society works. It never has. And it shouldn't. You got 5% of people that are butthurt, 95% of people that aren't. Well, guess what? We shouldn't be listening to the 5%. It's ridiculous. Black people are 13% of the population. Yeah, they should have a voice and they should be listened to. That doesn't mean you do everything they suggest, but they need to be listened to. And you know, trans people are like 0.001% of the population. That doesn't mean they shouldn't have a voice, obviously. But you don't structure everything and make every law just to suit 0.01% or 13%. You just try to make things as equal as possible. And it's never going to be perfect. Okay, sorry. If you're expecting perfection, you're in the wrong country and you're part of the wrong animal race and species, because you're never going to get it. And we got 10,000 years of history that we know of humans to prove that it's never going to be perfect.
But here's one that just was conducted in February. 57% who strongly identify with being Native American and 67% who frequently engage in tribal cultural practices are deeply insulted by a caricature of the Native American culture.
Yeah, and that poll doesn't say anything about the name Redskin. It says caricatures. What does that mean? Well, if you looked at the mascot for the Cleveland Indians, Chief Wahoo, kind of looked a little offensive to me. If the caricature for everybody, what was every white person was like Opie or Gomer Pyle, I mean, yeah, we would be a little bit, okay, we're not all freaking Gomer Pyle out here. We would be offended by that. So you could understand where they're coming from. So that poll he's citing doesn't work for his argument. And by the way, the people of the original poll, the most people who were offended or had a problem were young people, were the younger demographic. And by the way, as Skip and Shannon try to make the case, well, we got to go with the young people. That's what's being said a lot these days. Well, the young people, they know. They don't know shit. Most young people have a crap education, a crap public education. They don't teach history worth a damn. They're all teaching the tests. So they can't put history into context. They rely completely on social media. Most of that it is slanted to one side or the other, one political spectrum or the other. You're not getting real history. You're getting history through the filter of whatever political side of whatever argument it is or whatever issue it is. All right? And that's not history. That's propaganda.
People that create something have a hard time being told not to use it. That's why people want to use the N-word, because they created it. Skip, do you think Native Americans ever called themselves Redskins? No!
Yeah, actually.
I can see if he named it after one of the tribes, the Cherokee or the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, or Washawnee. That's not a tribe. That's a derogatory term. What?
All right, well, a little history lesson. Some of the first French settlers and colonists that came over, all right, they were trying to figure out the language of the local tribe. All right, so they finally started getting some of that down where they can start to speak to them. So, hey, what do you want to be called? They said, Redskin. That was the translation. Redskin. That's where the term came from. It wasn't a derogatory term. You can call me a white person, or you can call me a Latino, you can call me black. Hey, we're a Redskin. That's what it was. I mean, a lot of people of those First Nation tribes, their culture was very visual. All right, why do you think Sitting Bull had the name Sitting Bull? Because when he was born, they saw a bull sitting. Hey, your name's Sitting Bull. It's simple. They didn't get offended because they had red skin. They knew they had red skin. What were we to them? The white man. It wasn't derogatory. It's just, that's how you look. It's ridiculous.
When I was a little kid growing up watching what were called cowboy and Indian movies, what happened when they were going after the Indians? It was those lousy Redskins. It was at the very least, it was a derogatory term, right?
Yep.
And I've always said it on TV many times, can you imagine an early NFL owner saying, you know what? I want to pay tribute to the slaves who were the backbone of our economy for so many years in this country. I'm going to call my new NFL team the Blackskins.
Okay, there's a couple of things here. Skip has used this story many times, even back in his ESPN days, of when he was a young tyke looking at a TV that's about that wide, black and white, watching cowboys and Indian movies, which were very popular at the time. I've seen some of them, and the term redskin wasn't used a ton. And the derogatory term for Indians or tribal people, First Nation people, Native Americans, whatever you want to call them, the derogatory term was savage. Savage. That was the term used to berate and belittle them. They're just savages. Because any hate group or any group of people that hate on another group, all right, how do you do that? How do you do that and sleep at night? Well, you have to dehumanize that group of people. All right, because if you're doing that to another group of people that you see as human, it's hard to do that to. It really is. That's why you think the KKK sees black people like dogs or cattle. That's why. It's hard to hang someone from a tree who's speaking the same language you are if you see them as human. It's harder to be a murderous bastard. But if you're just doing that to a dog, it gets a little easier. The same thing with the Nazis. How can they kill off the Jews? You make them subhuman. Then it becomes easier to exterminate a whole group of people and run experiments on them. The word savage was used to dehumanize the Native Americans, not redskin. And then Skip uses that old argument, right? Well, what if it was the New York N-words or something like that? Well, again, just like I said, redskin was not a derogatory term. It wasn't a term used like that. The N-word was used to dehumanize people. So it's apples and oranges, all right? But, and by the way, most of exclusively this crap comes from politicians, because politicians like to keep us in our little tribal groups. White people over here, black people over there, because they know if we're united, it's harder to bullshit us, and it's easier for them to keep their power. Keep that in mind.
I have been campaigning for years for this nickname to go away. I will be honest with you, be completely transparent. I tried for a while in 2014 not to use it. It gets, during the football season, virtually impossible when you're on a sports debate show not to use that nickname because it's just the name of the team.
Right.
So now he's trying to excuse himself from being the racist he's talking about using a derogatory term. All right? It's ridiculous. Well, it becomes impossible. No, it's not. Just say Washington. You don't have to say Redskins. You don't have to say the Giants. Just say New York.
It's difficult for me to equate the suffering that your people went through, African Americans in this country, starting in 1619, born of slavery, and the sufferings of the Native Americans in this country.
So he even went to the length of trying to talk about the differences between the sufferings of black people in this country and the sufferings of natives in this country, to excuse the reason why he used Redskins and how come the term Redskin isn't as bad as the N-word. All right, this dude is going all around the world here trying to excuse himself. That's insane. And of course he stopped himself and then started talking about the Trail of Tears and going through all this history because he knew he was playing with some damn dirty fire here. He didn't want to go down that road. But I just find it amazing that Skip tries to go through all the history of this country and Native Americans in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes. You can't get any kind of context. You can't get any kind of real information. All you can get is propaganda in 2 minutes. You can't get real information in 2 minutes. And he does all that just to excuse him from using the term Redskin. It's disgusting.
Just for our younger viewers who don't get this, they were here first. This was their land.
Yeah.
When Columbus discovered America, it was populated by Native Americans.
I don't know if he used that as a smart-ass term, because it's pretty well known and documented now that Columbus didn't discover America, at least not North America. He discovered South America, and he knew he found someplace new. Everyone talks about, oh, he thought he landed in Indiana, or sorry. Everyone says he thought he landed in India. No. No, that wasn't Columbus. He thought he discovered someplace new. He just thought it was an island south of Japan. He had no idea it was a continent, a whole new continent, whole new landmass, not just an island, but a gigantic freaking South American continent he discovered. And that's what he did. He never went to the Americas. He never went to Florida. He didn't go to Plymouth Rock. He didn't go any of those places. And also, as someone else who doesn't know the history of jack shit, they weren't here first. there were groups of people that date back. I mean, the earliest you can date back the native tribe people is roughly 9,000 to 10,000 years ago. Now we are finding there was human existence in North America as much as 50,000 years ago, well before native tribes were here. And in South America, the DNA traces all the way back to Africa. You're talking about Africans that came to South America. They were the first ones here. Not the native tribe people. And as a matter of fact, one of the oldest cave drawings in the world is in South America. What does it show? It shows red stick figures throwing spears and killing black stick figures. This sounds a lot like people coming to an area that's already inhabited and conquering and killing those people is what it sounds like to me. So what does that tell you? That the Native Americans, and they're not even native, they came here over a land bridge. They just beat us by a few thousand years. But they weren't the first ones here. And they're just like their European conquerors. They too conquered people and killed them off and bred with them. They're humans. White people are humans, natives are humans, black people are humans, and if you look over the history of the entire world, every freaking people and culture at one time has been conquerors or the conquered. Everybody. No one's excluded. So keep that in your mind. And what you're going to see is a world that everyone's a victim and everyone's a victimizer. So stop pointing your damn fingers.
So the white men basically declared war on the Native Americans, declared war, and said, if you won't give up your land, we will take it from you. And there was bloodshed.
And again, you get centuries of history, and it all gets boiled down into 2 minutes of gobbledygook by Skip Bayless. It's unbelievable. Like I said, there were multiple skirmishes, battles, and wars between white people and the native tribes. There were tons and tons of wars between tribes. Nothing to do with white people. That had been around forever. And if you want to know why, I mean, why do they have braves? Why do they have warriors? They had that long before we came to these shores. That's for damn sure. And here's another thing. Why were they trading pelts for weapons, for guns? They did that. Natives, we were trading with them. What they wanted was the guns. Who were they trying to fight? Because it wasn't us at first. Did the white people and the white power structure, the government, did they treat them well after defeating them? No. No. And that's the real scar on American history. Now, there's not too many people out there that would conquer the land of a native tribe and then cut out a section of it and give it to them, which we have done. And by the way, that's not American soil anymore. You go to a reservation today, that's a native First Nation land. That's not America. We don't collect taxes on that. That's their property. They make their own laws and their own rules. So there's not too many other nations or cultures around the world that's ever done anything like that. Now, we still did them dirty, because if we found gold in some hills that we gave or set aside for native people in a reservation, oh, we'd take it back. That's why we got the term Indian giving. Nasty shit. And of course, the Trail of Tears was horrendous. And you could put that right on the doorstep of Andrew Jackson, which that's why I'm perfectly fine with removing Andrew Jackson from our currency and putting someone else on there, like a MLK or somebody. I'm fine with that, because he was a murderous bastard. Even though he did some good things as president, that kind of wipes out all the good. That's how I see it.
Well, a lot of disease came when they came over here, brought their butt over here.
Thank you.
There was no disease over here. They was just fine, just harmony.
Just fine, just harmony. Like I said, there were a lot of tribes that fought amongst themselves. And as far as them getting diseases from us, yeah, that's kind of a natural thing. I mean, humans since the dawn of time have always immigrated and migrated all over the planet. And when you do that and you run into another group of people who are not been exposed to the same kind of diseases you were exposed to, guess what? They're going to catch the shit. But it wasn't on purpose. All right, so stop trying to blame the Europeans for coming over here. Of course they were going to come over here. Whoa, holy shit, there's a whole new group of land here. Let's go, you know. I mean, this is why we go into space and we went to the moon and people want to go to Mars, because we like to discover new shit. We're fascinated by stuff. This is why science is popular. But it's kind of racist for, oh, you brought your butt over here and all your diseases. I'm like, dude, like black people didn't have diseases? I mean, come on. Everybody has diseases. Like I said, it's an unfortunate thing. And by the way, these diseases weren't just because the Europeans were dirty and disgusting and only bathed once a month, which was true. They stink. However, a lot of those diseases, like the Black Plague, came from the fleas on rats. Chickenpox came from chickens. I mean, a lot of these diseases were because of livestock. And, you know, Europeans just, they developed immunities to those diseases that, unfortunately, the native tribes did not have. Like, okay, all the Europeans have to stay right here, but everybody else is free to discover whatever. Black people can come to South America. They can go to Australia. I mean...
And the Native Americans are split into tribes.
Right.
So that's hard to unify and unite.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it hard to unify and unite if everything's harmony? I mean, there's such bullshit on this show. Especially when it comes to this, man. It drives me nuts when they start talking about stuff, because they talk out their ass. They haven't done the research. They don't know. I don't have a doctorate. I'm not a professional. I'm not a historian. But damn, I mean, everyone's got one of these, right? And it has all the history of the world on it. I mean,
Okay, now let's go to the origin of this nickname. I'm going to say it, Redskins.
Mm-hmm.
Where did it pop up? How did it jump into existence?
Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be good.
At first, they were the Boston Braves because they shared a stadium with a Boston National League baseball team, also referred to as the Braves.
Okay, so far he's kind of going with what Wikipedia says.
I guess he probably wanted to move to Fenway Park to share space with the Red Sox. He thought, well, let's change the nickname Braves to Redskins. Mm-hmm. Okay? So it's kind of a clever Red Sox, right. Redskins. But he knew it was going to be a problem. So how did he try to sell it to the public?
Okay, number one, this is where Skip's completely full of shit. It's a complete lie. That's not why they changed the name to Redskins. And I want to get into that, but first I want to address, he said it was going to be a problem. Well, if this was such a racist-ass nation, and this is back in the 1932, 33, then it shouldn't be a problem calling anything a derogatory racist term, because that's all America is, right? He
went out and found a man who was said to be part Sioux Indian at that point, mm-hmm. Native American, right. Obviously, but that he was part Sioux. His name was Henry Dietz, Lone Star Dietz, and made him the head coach of the Redskins just to try to sell it.
Now, this right here is a blatant lie. This whole area right here, Skip is completely lying. The Redskins didn't become the Redskins till after they hired Lone Star Dietz. And back then, we had the press. We had newspapers. We had journalists back then. And according to all the stories back then, they changed the name to the Redskins in honor of Mr. Dietz, who claimed to be a Native American. or at least part Native American. And that was under dispute back then. He even did a little time in jail because the government thought he lied about that, and he got some extra benefits off of it. Skip left all that shit out, or he lied. I figure where he went, he straight up lied about it. And which wouldn't be the first time in his career he straight up lied about something over political reasons or trying to look good for some reason. A little background on Mr. Dietz. He was a football coach. And no, they didn't hire him for some cover, like, oh, they just found him, plucked him out of nowhere. The dude's in the NFL Hall of Fame, and he was a champion level football coach. So he was a legit prospect to be a head coach in the NFL. They were probably lucky to get him, because back then, college coaches didn't want to go to the NFL. They stayed in the big time, which back then was the collegiate arena. And there is dispute about Mr. Dietz's actual lineage, heritage, whether he was a Native American or not. All I know is that his first wife, she was a Native American woman, and one of those famous Native American artists of that era before World War I. And she was a Native American activist, one of the first Native American rights activists. So, I don't know. She married him for some damn reason.
They got beaten down into reservation existences, right, where they didn't have the leadership to fight back.
No.
And so Skip makes this other point of leadership. All right. And he made a point before of there wasn't this galvanizing leader for all the nations. Well, there were times they did work together. That's how we got the Oregon Trail. All the leaders and the chiefs of all these different tribes came together, sat down with white politicians, came to an agreement that they would allow wagon trains to go through the Great Plains up to Oregon where all the gold was. And the reason the white politicians did that, because they didn't want a bunch of war with all these tribes. And the tribes didn't want to look at these damn caravans coming through and say, what the hell are they doing in our backyard, and kill them. Okay, they wanted them to get through there unmolested. Because at that time, white people, they didn't want the Great Plains. It looked like shit to them. It was a big field of grass, like a grass desert. But all those tribes came together to make a deal, and make a pact, which was screwed up by a damn Mormon, unfortunately. We can all agree on the Mormons, but joking, kind of.
Until now, they have fallen into a time in which, thanks to your community, we have had some racial enlightenment.
It's the time. You see, there is some enlightenment. I think black people have been mistreated in this country in certain arenas, certain areas, like the justice system and the drug war, just to name a few. The super predator laws that were passed in the 90s. Yeah, some of that stuff ain't so great. The police, there's a lot of bad history between black people and police going all the way back to slave days. So a lot of that hasn't been cleaned up, unfortunately. So there's some truth to those statements. And I think, we are progressing. Whenever you make a few steps of progress, unfortunately, you get a lot of bullshit artists that take steps with you. And unfortunately, there's a lot of Native people who don't even know their own history. And by the way, same's true with white people, black people, Hispanic people, especially young people. They don't bother going back and looking at the history. Let's see where this Redskin name came from. Let's see where a lot of this stuff came. You would be shocked at where a lot of shit came from. You'd be shocked to find out that there were a handful of good Nazis throughout the world that did great things. All right, that's what Schindler's List is about. If you haven't seen it, go back and look at a movie about a good Nazi that saved a couple thousand Jews. So, I mean, the problem these days is everyone looks at history or anything else in little segments, little pieces taken out, and that way they can fit it into whatever narrative, political narrative, that they want to tell, instead of just going on real history. Things aren't black and white. Not all the villains are the villains. Not all the heroes are the heroes. That's the human story. I mean, that's what the yin and yang is all about, right? The good and the evil, the duality of man that exists in everybody. Everyone's capable of being a good person. Everyone's capable of being evil. Overall, I don't care if they change their name. This isn't what this video is about. Change the name, I don't care. But it's just segments like this where these guys talk like they're so enlightened and educated, and they're ignorant and lying about shit. It drives me nuts. So I just wanted to make this video to kind of clear the record. And I hope these people, it'll never happen, but it'd be nice to see people on TV not bullshitting you just because it doesn't fit their narrative. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. I'll be back with some other crap later. Bye.